Hey, it's Ted here. I'm working on a 1GM-10. This is a Yanmar, an older, probably 1980s Yanmar one-cylinder engine, and it needs a starter. There's a grinding sound coming out of the starter, so it's on its end of life, and we're going to swap it out before it totally fails. So this is what it looks like. So there's pretty good access here coming through the side. You know, you've got the bottom bolt that has the battery negative cable and the top bolt back there. I got to get that out. And then there is a large red battery cable here. That is the battery positive cable with a couple of power supplies coming off of it. And then below it, I can get down here. So below it, then this is the excitation cable. So I gotta take this off too. So this cable, this wire is what energizes it, that comes from the key switch. So we gotta take this wire off too, and then pull that rubber boot up and take that screw out without dropping it. Okay, so Phillips head screwdriver, break that screw loose. Take that bolt out, screw. Now, there we go. Okay. And it's actually staying with the actual wire itself, the wire end. It's threaded right into it, so I may have to unthread if it doesn't fit the new starter. If it does, I'll leave it on like that. Okay, and then I think the next bolt, that's 13 millimeters. All right, so I got myself a couple of long extensions and my ratchet. I'll take that battery cable loose. Get that loose. That takes a 13 millimeter socket. All right, so I got the nut and the washer off, and I have the battery cable disconnected here. So these two wires have to go back on with the battery cable. Those are the wires that go to the engine for up to the helm. That's power supply to the key switch. And the output coming back from the alternator is where that wire comes back. So if you ever have a problem with that alternator wire, that would be the output of the alternator back to the starter and back to the battery cable and ultimately back to the battery. So we're going to pull those other two bolts out next. All right, so it's a 14 millimeter socket that takes those two bolts out. We'll take those out. Okay, so on the upper bolt, there's also another ground here. So there's a ground wire here on the top bolt on that. And I've got the top one out. Now I'm just gonna get the bottom one out and pull the starter out. Well, we know why the noise was in there. That's a first. We're gonna put another starter in it and hope. All right, so I got my torque wrench set up, and I'm going to torque those two bolts. I got the starter back in, and we're going to torque the two bolts to 30 foot-pounds. Okay. All right, I got to take this bolt out. Nut and washer off of here. I'll put these wires back on. There, I didn't drop them. I got lucky. Didn't drop them. All right, so the first is these power cords. I got the grounds one on top already plugged in. That one fell off. Let's put that back on again. Yep. All right, and then that cable. And the two washers, if I can get them on there without dropping them. Here we go. Yep. And then the new nut. Just gonna snug this nut up, this bolt, because you can't over tighten it, you'll break the solenoid. So this is a little challenging, but this is one of those things you learn through experience. Don't over tighten it. Now I'm gonna take this Phillips screw out. The other one's still on the wire, and I'm hoping it's gonna be the same size if I'm lucky. Find that out in a second. Really? There we go. Okay. Let's see if we get lucky and this screw's the same thread. You might be a winner. And we are lucky. Yes, we are. It is the same thread. Alright. Put that little boot back on there. Tighten this bolt up. Alright, where's my ratchet? Where'd you go? Extensions. Ratchet. And a 13mm socket. Good. Put the rubber boot back on. Yep. Okay, there we go. Now we go and try to start it and see how it sounds. We'll see what it sounds like in a minute. So years ago, I took this starter out and put an aftermarket starter in it, and I thought he was going to get it rebuilt. He didn't, but he's going to get it rebuilt now. We're going to have the original, which is right here. So this is the original Yanmar starter from years ago. It's a lot heavier, and it has a lot different shape to the way that it's reinforced. So this part is bad, and send it to an armature shop, and they'll rebuild it. And we'll swap this one out for that, you know, aftermarket overseas one. I don't know where they come from, but my guess is China. But for cheap money, it gets you back in business. But after seeing this, I know I'm not going to do this again. That's for sure. I've never seen a starter. Can't say that. I have seen starters, the nose break off, but not very often. It's usually the bolts are loose. And I had torqued these bolts like I did before to 30 foot-pounds. They were plenty tight when I had to break them loose. So the starter was not loose, which would have been a reason for this to kind of get out of alignment and maybe break it off. But this is just a bad casting. I think this is just a, you know, an inferior design. So we'll rebuild the other one. All right, starter's all in. We got that all bolted on. We're going to try and start it. One last thing before you forget. You know, I've torqued this to 30 foot-pounds, and I have zeroed my torque wrench. I always check twice right after I have used it. If I back it off, I want to make sure before I wrap it up that I back my torque wrench back to the lowest setting so it doesn't get a set in it and come out of calibration.